Thank you for joining. I really appreciate it. I don't know if you guys are coming from the first video or if you didn't watch the first video. The first video that I did make was just the diagnosis of my multiple sclerosis and just kind of explaining all of that and kind of what happened there, kind of like some of the things that I learned from that. Again, just to give a recap, my name's Ashby, and if you again didn't hear the first video, just kind of went over just the intricacies of what happened in being diagnosed, and then also just how it is that I felt moving forward. What I wanted to go ahead and do is just kind of go over the next few months after my diagnosis, and just kind of explain kind of the emotions that I went through, and then also some of the things that I learned through those emotions, and just kind of have that vulnerability in order for people to understand kind of what it is that, what is that maybe I was feeling. And then also on top of that, if you feel like you're feeling some of those same feelings, kind of being able to relate to that on a certain level, and maybe you get some help out of that as well. So with that, I believe the last video I ended off on just explaining like, hey, like, make sure you take care of your body, just because, you really only get, one body, and it's really easy to just think that life is endless, and that you kind of just have this ever-maxing potential of just doing whatever the fuck you want to yourself, and then nothing's gonna happen. There's not gonna be any repercussions or any consequences, but that's definitely not true. I think that with regards to, I'm reading this book, and there was a statement in there where it was saying that society, the way society kind of sets us up is for us to kind of forget about the fact that there's only one thing that's guaranteed in life, and that's death, unfortunately, which sounds a little bit morbid, and I apologize if that's ruining your day here, but I mean, it's just, that's the truth of the matter. So with that, yeah, take care of your body. But so after I came back from the concert, essentially I kind of went over, like, I started to regain my vision, and that's not to say necessarily that I had accepted the fact that I do have MS. It was more so just a relief, because I didn't really think, or I didn't really know what was going to happen, and I just to be able to receive, I guess, like, something that I had taken for granted, to be able to receive that that ability back was just, I looked at it as such like a huge blessing in my eyes, and something that like really was important for me moving forward. Obviously everybody wants to be able to see and smell and do all the things that we are so used to and accustomed to being able to do, right? But I still hadn't necessarily come to grips with the fact that I did have MS. It wasn't until I went into the doctor's office, I think it was like the third time around that I went into the doctor's office, and they essentially had told me, just like the ramifications as to what MS was, because like I didn't have like a whole lot of knowledge. I just knew that, like, I mean, MS wasn't necessarily like the greatest thing to be diagnosed with, but there's obviously worse things in life, which I kind of like had to like come to grips with in terms of like comparisons, even though you don't wish for either one of them. Yeah, the doctor kind of explained everything for me, and just kind of took me through the process of what to expect in the coming years, and what to expect within the coming days, coming months, all that good stuff. And then that's when I think he said one thing, and that's when it hit me, where I was like, okay, like, dude, like, you're gonna have to change some shit. Like, your life has to change. Because he had told me, he was like, hey, like, we do have better medicine than we did in previous years. With that being said, there is the potential, I mean, in the future, depending on how you live your life, there's that potential that, you may not be able to walk, right? And I was like, okay, like, I just got my vision back, and I feel like hearing that I may not be able to walk in the future, like, that was rough. That was definitely really rough. That was hard for me personally to handle. I obviously, in the moment, I was fine in the moment. Like I like let it just kind of like hit me, and then I just took it for what it was, right? Like I just took it for what it was. I wanted to cry, I didn't cry. I think I had to just really absorb it. I'm like a person that needs to absorb the information moving forward before I can really do anything with it. So he told me that, and he said like, hey, like you know, you might not be able to walk in the future. At which point, I believe I was with my mom at the time too. And from that point, we ended up leaving. And then I was going back to school. So I got in my car. I went back home at the time because I was living in my college town during that time. Sorry if you can hear my dog. She's just drinking water. But yeah, so I kind of just went back home. I remember just like being in my room, kind of just like alone, just like letting that process. There was like a moment in time, because this was all kind of like in the midst of COVID as well. Like this was like 2020-ish, 2019. Like we were getting into that COVID era. And I remember my roommate at the time was gone. And so I was just legitimately alone. I was just like sitting there and I'm like thinking, I'm like, okay, like I don't want to be disabled, and I don't necessarily want to have this disability define who I am. And so there was like an assortment of emotions that were kind of flowing through me. And so, and me, myself, I'm not somebody that like is going to talk about his problems. Like, it's interesting because like, I'm like talking about it over the internet. Like I'm explaining what I've went through over the internet, but, it's something that I've handled. It's something that I have like a procedure with, which is what I'm trying to explain. But yeah, there was a lot of emotion. I was decently depressed for a second. Not for a second. When I say a second, like a couple of weeks. So like maybe not like a second, but like there was like feelings of like, why me? Like really angry. Like why the fuck do I have this? Like why is it that like I'm getting gypped like this? Like why is it that like now I have to change my lifestyle? Like I really like the lifestyle that I was living before. But it also turned my life around a lot. Like because at the time I had like flunked out of school twice. Yeah, because I just partied. All I did was party. That's all. I remember people used to ask me like, oh, like Ashby, when are you gonna graduate college? And I would just be like, whenever they put a cap on my head. So I like flunked out of school a couple of times, right? And I'd gotten in trouble just like with the law and stuff. Like I was not a great kid. I was not a great kid. And this really was like an eye-opening situation for me. And it was almost something that like, it took a couple of months, but it was one of those things where I sat there and I said to myself, I was like, I can either let this be the defining factor to, I guess, a grounds for failure in life, like, and me just saying like, oh, fuck it, like I have MS, like I'm gonna give up. Or I can say, this isn't gonna change shit. Like I'm gonna have to be a better person. And it was like, and it takes a long time because it's not something that just like snapped in my head. It took like 2 to 3 months of like crying and like victim mentality and like, oh, like this, that, and third, and being like really, really upset. But at the end of the day, like, it's just like, you don't really get a choice because it's something that you now have. Like you don't get to control that. Like that's not something that I was able to control, like whether or not I had MS. But at the end of the day, like I can choose how I react to me having MS. And that's took me a few months to be like, okay, like this is what you're gonna do. What you're gonna do is you're just gonna be the best fucking version of yourself that you can be. Like, and that's it. Like, you don't really have another option, because the other option is you being a fucking loser. And I was like, I'm not doing I'm not doing that. Because as much as I party and all that stuff, like, I've always been like very ambitious, and very like confident, goal oriented, all that good stuff. But I just like to party. But now it was like, okay, like maybe like the universe was saying like, no, now you need to stop. So that was huge for me. And yeah, it was really big, because that really set the tone for the rest of my life, to be honest with you. From there on out, everything was, I just viewed life as a complete challenge, and I still do. Like, everything I do in life is a challenge, and not the challenge of like the aspect of like what hinders me with regards to disabilities that I face in having MS, but everything's just a challenge. Like, at that point, I wasn't incredibly happy with like my body. Like, I wasn't fat or anything. Like, I just was like, I was like, I want better, right? Like, I want to be cut. Like, I want to be an absolute animal. So I reached out to a trainer, and at the time I was like 15% body fat, maybe 15 to 18, something odd like that, or something. And and again, it's not bad, but I reached out to a trainer, and I was like, I want to be cut. Like, I want to be fucking ripped. And I did it. Like, I ended up reaching out. He put me on a plan, and it was 2 workouts a day. I was waking up at 5 a.m., going to do cardio in the morning, fasted cardio in the morning, and then I went and did weightlifting during the day. And I did that consistently for 3 months, 3 to 4 months. And I cut down to like 6 or 7% body fat. And it was just, I was just alone. Like, there was a lot of things that like I mentally had to come to grips with, and I just mentally did it alone, because at the end of the day, I had all these people to support me in regards to me having MS, but the only person that really had it was me. So I came to learn how to think on my own and think like, okay, what is it that's gonna help and make me better? Because if I'm not at my best, then I can't help others in the first place, right? So I did a lot of that alone. But I was very happy, because I felt like it gave me like a lot of mental strength in order to say like, okay, like this MS shit, this isn't defining me at all. Like, I'm gonna kill it. Like, and if I don't kill it, like you know, no worries to some extent, but like still, like there's no reason that anything should be able to get in my way. And yeah, that was like the true defining factor, is just like realizing like nothing's wrong with me unless I let something be wrong with me. Like, that was big. Like, it's just like, I could potentially not be able to walk in the future, but I can walk now. So utilize the fact that I can walk now and become the strongest, the most like ruthless, just goal-oriented, mindseted, like just like any amount of time that you have today, take advantage of it. Just become an animal. Like, just, and so from there, like when I started the 5 a.m.s, like after that first 3 months and I saw my body change, that was it. That was it. I had a 1.6, maybe 1.5 GPA going into my senior year because of all the suspensions and just how terribly I was doing at school. I had a year and a half left, and I don't think I got any grade below an A- for the rest of the year. Yeah, for the rest of the year. I think maybe I got like a B+, maybe, but I really think that I got nothing less than like a 3.7 for that rest of the year. It ended up bumping my cumulative up to like a 2.4 or some stupid shit like that, which, ooh, no, it might have actually bumped my cumulative up a little bit higher. I'm not really sure, but I know for a fact my overall GPA went up at least 0.9 to 1 point. Like, I went in, and then on top of that, I was also waking up at 3 a.m. because I said to myself, I was like, okay, like, they say people with MS are always tired. I'm like, I'm not gonna be tired. And that's what it is. I'm just not gonna be tired. Like, they say people with MS have weak legs or aren't strong. And I'm like, okay, like, I'm gonna be able to fucking squat the most in the fucking room. Like, I didn't like doing legs beforehand. As soon as I found out like all the different symptoms, I was like, yeah, we're doing legs every other day. I ended up getting my squat up from like 225 up to like, I think the max is like 425 now. But yeah, just total mind shift change, just everything changed. It was like everything became a challenge just because I was choosing the higher road rather than choosing to do what was easier. And that was something that I've taken throughout the course of now 4 or 5 years of having MS, which has just been absolutely huge. So that's the story for today. Anyways, I didn't say bye last time, so you guys have a good one. Thank you for listening.